As the coronavirus continues to spread all over the world, a few conspiracy theories have spread as well about what's thought to be the main culprit behind the pandemic. One of those conspiracy theories is that the coronavirus does not actually exist, but is actually all the result of 5G technology being introduced into societies all over the world. Doctors have pressed that this 5G technology is harmful to humans and can cause forms of radiation poisoning. This radiation poisoning can leave you with flu-like symptoms. Conspiracy theorists are taking this as far as to call it the 5G flu. Well, what is 5G?
5G is the fifth generation of wireless data networks, and it will improve them far more than 4G or 3G ever could. You'll feel it in your phone, your home, your car, and in the city and town around you. Downloads and streaming should happen literally without delay. Cars will talk to each other to prevent collisions. An untethered augmented and virtual reality can finally be achieved with real-time response. Not to mention industrial benefits like remote surgery or drone control. 5G does its magic with three key abilities. First, high bandwidth. 4G could only muster about 200 megabits per second of data throughput on a good day. 5G can handle up to 1 gigabit or more, that's 1,000 megabits a second, on up. Low latency. 4G suffers from around 100 milliseconds or so in response delay or latency. 5G reaction time can be as low as 1 millisecond, which makes everything happen virtually instantly. And dense connections. In a given square kilometer, 4G could only manage to connect about 1/10 the amount of devices as 5G can. If that's some of what 5G does, how does it do it? 5G uses new radio technology, the part of any wireless device that makes the connection. 5G uses some radio frequencies in a band known as sub-6, from 600 megahertz to 6 gigahertz, part of which is also used by current 4G LTE. But 5G will also use a higher band of radio frequencies, from 24 gigahertz to as high as 86. These much higher frequencies bring with them much higher data rates. Now, while these new 5G radio waves can carry more data with higher performance, they can't carry it as far. So 5G will use a lot of so-called small cells. These are small versions of the big cellular towers we all know. 5G will also use some new tricks in these small cells, like beamforming, to efficiently aim transmissions rather than just spray everything everywhere. The bottom line, though, you will need new phones, tablets, portable hotspots, and the like with a 5G radio inside to connect to the new 5G networks. Your current 4G or even 3G gear can't tap into it. 5G networks will also position more data and computing resources closer to you that will avoid blunting 5G's low latency benefits. Most of us do think of phones when we think of wireless networks, but phones may actually be the least interesting thing about 5G. It will also power autonomous cars, so they have awareness of every other car, bike, pedestrian, and traffic signal around them. Smart cities based on 5G can make almost anything that's electric also connected and aware. When a bridge needs repair, why can't it tell someone? With a mesh of 5G connected sensors, it could. And then there's your home. 5G will offer a new way to get internet there, eschewing cable or DSL, and one day maybe even obviating your Wi-Fi router altogether, as devices may just use 5G natively to connect directly to a wireless ISP. 5G has renewed concerns about the safety of cellular radio waves. Some cities have taken action to block 5G deployment. Health questions come up around 5G's use of microwave frequencies, lots of them as we've seen, thanks to that large number of small cells that will be installed around us. Now, while 5G may sound like a lot of microwave ovens mounted on poles running with their doors open, in fact, microwaves are nothing new. Already emitted by your current smartphone, old cordless phones, your wireless headphones and earbuds, and just about anything with Wi-Fi, as well as, yes, microwave ovens. But even 5G's highest frequencies are considered by scientists to be non-ionizing radiation. You have to move on up to X-rays, gamma rays, and cosmic radiation to find the kind of emissions that will harm cells, and 5G is far below that. 5G follows the inverse square law, losing power rapidly at even a small distance from the small cell. The US CDC says there is no scientific evidence to provide a definite answer to the question of cellular radio wave safety, whether it's 3G, 4G, or 5G.
The high-frequency waves used in 5G are called the millimeter wave, or the MM wave. These waves are used in the active denial system, which is a non-lethal directed energy weapon developed by the United States military for perimeter and crowd control. It's also known as the heat ray because it works by heating up the surfaces of targets and even human skin. Raytheon is currently marketing this technology. This technology is currently used in police sirens. It was also used in the Los Angeles Police Department and prison system to scatter crowds, scatter prisoners, and break up prison fights. With beamforming, no signal is wasted. Currently with 4G, the signal is just sent everywhere and whoever has the password can access it. However, with 5G, the signal is going straight to the device. There's so many 5G towers and devices that are going to be boosting that signal continuously, and that is what they call the smart grid.
Our current electric grid was conceived more than 100 years ago when electricity needs were simple. Power generation was localized and built around communities. Most homes had only small energy demands, such as a few light bulbs and a radio. The grid was designed for utilities to deliver electricity to consumers' homes and then bill them once a month. This limited one-way interaction makes it difficult for the grid to respond to the ever-changing and rising energy demands of the 21st century. The smart grid introduces a two-way dialogue where electricity and information can be exchanged between the utility and its customers. It's a developing network of communications, controls, computers, automation, and new technologies and tools working together to make the grid more efficient, more reliable, more secure, and greener. This smart grid enables newer technologies to be integrated, such as wind and solar energy production and plug-in electric vehicle charging. With our participation as informed consumers, this smart grid will replace the aging infrastructure of today's grid, and utilities can better communicate with us to help manage our electricity needs. The smart home communicates with the grid and enables consumers to manage their electricity usage. By measuring a home's electricity consumption more frequently through a smart meter, utilities can provide their customer with much better information to manage their electricity bills. Inside the smart home, a home area network, or HAN, connects smart appliances, thermostats, and other electric devices to an energy management system. Smart appliances and devices will adjust their run schedule to reduce electricity demand on the grid at critical times and lower consumers' energy bills. These smart devices can be controlled and scheduled over the web or even a TV. Renewable resources, such as wind and solar, are a sustainable and growing source for electric power. However, renewable power sources are variable by nature and add complexity to normal grid operations. The smart grid provides the data and automation needed to enable solar panels and wind farms to put energy onto the grid and optimize its use. To keep up with constantly changing energy demands, utilities must turn power plants on and off depending on the amount of power needed at certain times of the day. The cost to deliver power depends on the time of day it is used. Electricity is more costly to deliver at peak times because additional, often less efficient power plants must be run to meet the higher demand. This smart grid will enable utilities to manage and moderate electricity usage with the cooperation of their customers, especially during peak demand times. As a result, utilities will be able to reduce their operating costs. By deferring electricity usage away from peak hours and having appliances and devices run at other times, electricity production is more evenly distributed throughout the day. The power being used right now was generated less than a second ago many miles away. At each instance, the amount of electricity generated must equal the consumption across the entire grid. Smart grid technologies provide detailed information that enables grid operators to see and manage electricity consumption in real time. This greater insight and control reduces outages and lowers the need for peak power. In control rooms across the grid, engineers will be able to more precisely and predictably manage electricity production, reducing the need to fire up costly secondary power plants. The distribution system routes power from the utility to residential and commercial customers through power lines, switches, and transformers. Utilities typically rely on complex power distribution schemes and manual switching to keep power flowing to their customers. Any break in this system caused by storms, bad weather, or sudden changes in electricity demand can lead to outages. The smart grid's distribution intelligence counters these energy fluctuations and outages by automatically identifying problems, then rerouting and restoring power delivery. Utilities can further use distribution intelligence to predict and manage electricity usage with the cooperation of their customers, leading to lower production cost. The charging of a plug-in electric vehicle can be managed over a home area network, or HAN. The HAN can balance the demand for electricity across the household and prioritize between the electric vehicle and other appliances to manage electricity usage and reduce costs. With smart grid technologies and consumer participation, utilities can more easily handle the increased demand for power to run the electric vehicles and ensure charging needs are met. By adding more plug-in electric vehicles to the grid, we have the potential to reduce fuel costs, lower our dependency on foreign oil, and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Listen to what this guy has to say. I'm very pleased to be able to finally announce our 7G vision. Now, if you look at any of the legacy technologies today, like 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, any wireless technology, it works on the principles of transmit and receive. So it's always the transmit part which is a problem, because when you're transmitting something, it consumes power, and of course there is this radiation issues, all kinds of things. And if we do it right, we don't even need a separate receiver. Humans can act as a receiver. So let's say humans, we actually inhale oxygen and emit carbon dioxide. On the other hand, trees, they inhale carbon dioxide and emit oxygen. Now, if we were designed optimally, we could actually consume oxygen or carbon dioxide and emit carbon dioxide or oxygen. So, this is where I think nature failed us. So if we design 7G correctly, we would have a chance to fix all future wireless technologies. All humans, we emit positive or negative energy. So the negative energy could be something like wicked thoughts, jealousy, depression, etc. What if you can use this negative energy and use this as a transmission media? And you can even extend it further. So you can use anything that's harming the environment, like carbon dioxide, methane, whatever, and you can use them as the transmission media. So in return, you have actually consumed all the negative energy or anything that's harming the environment and turned it into something positive. And this can actually be useful not just for humans, but also for the environment. The first goal for us is to have a logo designed correctly. Now, if you look at 3G or 4G or 5G logo, it's basically a number and a letter and with some kind of a radiation sign. This is not something that can connect with people emotionally, spiritually, economically. So what we need to do is we need to design a logo that actually connects with people, and the people can actually buy into this vision.
The most important thing to do is get the logo right.
Beamforming and 5G will empower technology, but it's concerned that it will also perfect surveillance systems and will lead to a complete lack of privacy, because 5G is a network where the waves are being transmitted both ways, to and from the receivers. With 5G, every device, vehicle, and piece of technology all become part of the receiver, all together becoming what they call the smart grid.
With 5G or fifth generation technology. It will dramatically speed up phones, 5G, and is designed to connect everything around us, transmit huge amounts of data instantly, and transform entire cities.
We're now walking on the floor that touches everything in your city.
Huawei Chief Digital Information Officer Edwin Diener shows off what Huawei calls Smart City. Closed-circuit cameras feed into a database with advanced artificial intelligence, and facial recognition can identify everyone, cross-reference license plates, and analyze unlimited information. Diener calls it the future of policing.
Where, for example, today, teams manually need to have to look through CCTV camera footage. With a good video cloud analytics platform, you can say, I'm looking for a white guy, blue jeans, red t-shirt, and give an order or a query, almost like a Google search. I can say, find me this black car with this particular license plate, of which I think it is an L or a 7.
Huawei promotional videos compare the combination of AI, 5G, and surveillance to how a brain processes information to control the body. The US fears that Huawei's information isn't secure because the control is actually the Chinese government's.
To have Huawei operating as a 5G network in our country or in our allies' countries, we believe represents a fundamental compromise of our national security and the privacy of millions of citizens.
It may actually be billions of citizens. Huawei and other Chinese telecom companies are building 5G and smart cities in more than 65 countries. PBS NewsHour producers in 3 continents heard praise from police and alarm from human rights advocates beginning in the Philippines.
There will be no let up in this campaign.
The government of President Rodrigo Duterte is waging what it calls a war on drugs. It's turned to China for help. In 2016, Duterte traveled to Beijing to secure Chinese government loans that allow the Philippines to buy a Chinese safe city.
Huawei sets up safe city solutions.
In terms of the benefit of this project to the country, it's immeasurable.
Jonathan Malaya is the Philippines' Department of Interior and Local Government's Undersecretary.
If we are to ensure the safety and security of our countrymen, we must use every tool available.
But how are those tools being used? The government's opponents call the war on drugs an extrajudicial, murderous crackdown that's killed tens of thousands. And they say Chinese technology could enhance government suppression.
What a Safe Cities program is all about is increased electronic and technological surveillance.
Francisco Ashley Estadillo is a former congressman. He says Huawei is a front for the Chinese government. Founder and CEO Ren Zhengfei is a current member of the Chinese Communist Party and former officer of the Chinese military. And international researchers say Huawei employees regularly collaborate with analysts from the Army or PLA.
My concerns with Huawei is if a company which was founded and is still currently run by former PLA officers, that already is a problem.
Huawei insists that it's private and independent, and the Philippines government points to Huawei's success.
If you look at the Southeast Asian region, no country has banned Huawei. Why should we be unduly alarmed when the rest of the world is not alarmed?
But critics say that misses the point, because Manila's safe city could hand over unlimited data to Chinese companies that must collaborate with the Chinese government. Chinese law says, quote, any organization or citizen shall support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work according to law. China has no independent judiciary for companies to appeal.
They cannot say no to any request from the Chinese government for such kind of intelligence gathering.
We found similar concerns 5,000 miles west in Ethiopia. For more than a decade, Ethiopian and Chinese officials have collaborated to improve Ethiopian infrastructure, including the phone and internet backbone for state-owned Ethio Telecom.
Almost $1.6 billion we have an agreement with Huawei. They are implementing the telecom infrastructure.
But that infrastructure provides a backdoor for intelligence agencies, says investigative journalist Daniel Berhane.
They designed the system in a way the security agencies can parallelly access the internet data and the voice data.
Berhane is the editor of a news site and was Ethiopia's first political blogger. He accuses multiple Ethiopian governments of repression and surveillance, but says Chinese technology has allowed this government to better exploit Ethio Telecom to spy on its critics, including journalists. Berhane says he too was targeted by government surveillance and his accounts were hacked.
Spy agency used that code and entered my Facebook account. Huawei was an accomplice in setting up the system in a manner. Huawei is doing a business. Why would they care about my political rights and my freedom?
That same question was asked by the new government in another country, 8,000 miles further west, Ecuador. ECU 911 coordinates Ecuador's emergency responses and receives a national network of 4,600 surveillance cameras. Juan Zapata is ECU 911's director.
La videovigilancia y la tecnología.
Video surveillance and technology gives absolute results because there are eyes without resting. We have saved lives.
Former President Rafael Correa built ECU 911 with Chinese technology and Chinese government loans. In 2016, he gave Chinese President Xi Jinping a tour of the center. But the new president, Lenín Moreno, says ECU 911 surveillance wasn't only designed to save lives. It was built with a backdoor to Ecuador's intelligence agency that allowed ECU 911 surveillance to be weaponized against the government's opponents.
Las tareas.
The tasks the institution should have exclusively focused on were diversified to a different task, a perverse one, espionage of political opponents, and espionage of citizens they had intentions to harm.
This is what that espionage looked like. In this safe neighborhood in the capital, Quito, a single camera stands watch and looks right into a specific living room. Retired Colonel Mario Pazmiño was a constant critic of the former government. He says they installed the Chinese-produced camera to keep watch.
They choose Chinese companies because China had already developed a monitoring system that allowed them to have control over the activity of the population. Their gift is a Trojan horse, designed to control everything in society.
Which brings us back to Shenzhen and the core of the U.S.'s concerns. A White House official talking to me called this authoritarianism in a box. What's your response to that?
What do you want me to say? I think it's also liberation in a box. I think it's also city management and being very efficient in daily operations in a box.
Some governments are using that to persecute or target their critics. So can this be used for surveillance? Is it being used for surveillance?
Well, what you're looking at is an element of intelligent video surveillance, which is common technology that's available worldwide. Like every technology, it can be used in certain ways.
Does that concern you, that some of these countries might be using this?
Personally, yes, of course. I'm a person just like everybody else is a person. I have my own concerns and my own views, and yes, of course, that is a concern.
But the genie is out of the bottle. Huawei's been packaging smart cities and 5G for years. The U.S. is trying to contain Huawei's expansion and is building its own 5G systems. But the U.S. is behind, says another Huawei technology recipient, Indonesian Minister Luhut Panjaitan.
American technology is very good, but the last 5 years, I think the Chinese technology is much better. I think to some extent I agree to America about the Trump policy, but I think it's too late to force China to follow all American desire.
Senior U.S. officials say they're trying to stop Chinese technology before it changes the world.
But how does 5G affect your health? Can it really give you flu-like symptoms? Does the radiation poison leave you with symptoms close to the coronavirus?
5G fifth generation technology promises faster download speeds and conveniences that most of us have never dreamed of, but will also be blanketed with a new type of radiation called millimetre waves. Health experts are warning about the rising risks with a 5G rollout.
It's not been made clear to the public that 5G won't just be another number and letter on your cell phone. It requires an entirely new infrastructure of thousands of small cellular antennas to be erected throughout cities where it's going to be installed.
What would 5G infrastructure look like? Small cell antennas could be placed as close as every third hydro pole. Scientists from 42 countries are now warning their governments about the emerging health problems associated with wireless radiation, and Canadian doctors and scientists have added their voices.
The most prevalent symptoms include headache, fatigue, decreased ability to concentrate, tinnitus, irritability, and insomnia. Impacts on the heart and the nervous system are also of great concern.
So patients are
Dr. Rena Bray has been working at the Provincial Environmental Health Clinic for 15 years and seen the number of people suffering adverse effects from electromagnetic exposure rising.
We are concerned that the upcoming introduction of 5G will significantly increase the proximity and extent of exposure to microwave radiation in Ontarians. We predict that the number of people who develop the symptoms I just mentioned will rise in the places where 5G is first installed.
Dr. Magda Havas is internationally recognized for her research on the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution. She said that at high intensities, these waves cause intense heat and pain because sweat glands on the surface of our skin act like mini antennas.
At lower frequencies, scientists are predicting damage to eyes, loss of insect populations which are already declining, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, and physiological effects on the nervous system and on the immune system.
Radiation from radio frequencies is classed in the same category of carcinogens as lead. One advisor to the World Health Organization said there's enough evidence that if they were to re-evaluate radio frequency radiation,
it would be placed in class 1, i.e. a human carcinogen, and governments could not possibly ignore that.
Some say the scientific debate about the health effects of microwave radiation is over, but the question remains, can we afford to take this risk? Medical doctors are requesting delayed deployment until testing can be conducted on the long-term